It's 1979. I had been taken out of my house by the courts, and I'd been placed in a community homeschool. I was going to finish my education in a community homeschool. I wasn't a bad kid in school. I was just a kid that was very much just troublesome, not troubled. Troublesome, just troublesome. My troublesome led me into petty crime as a kid, and I ended up in a school called Ardell Community Homeschool. When it was opened in 1911, it was called the Ardell. It was called the Stepney Boys School for Orphans. Around about the 1950s, it became Ardell Community Homeschool, which was actually a reproved school. That's where you just went when the courts didn't know what to do with you, and they didn't want to send you into youth detention, but they knew you still needed an education. So I ended up in a community homeschool called Ardell. That's where I finished. You never got really an education there, you got a trade. I started there 1 year after a teacher had joined. And that teacher's name was Mr. Cliff German. Cliff German was born in the East End of London. He was born in the East End of London. He was as Cockney as Cockneys came. As a young man, he worked on the docks. And then he got involved in engineering. He was a brilliant engineer. I've never met a man who knew so much in my life. He was literally a walking encyclopedia, a walking dictionary, lectionary. He was Google before Google was thought about. He was Google. He was Google. Funny man, great man. And I did engineering just because I liked him. I just liked him, so I thought, let me just do engineering. And I did engineering with him, and I spent so much time in his workshop. You did English, you did math, but most of the day I did engineering. He taught me to appreciate metals. He taught me to work right across the band of working with metals. He taught me how to enjoy machines. He taught me to love the smell of a milling machine, the smell of a milling machine and a lathe. He taught me how to weld, to be an arc welder. He taught me so many great things. The most important thing he taught me, though, in retrospect, is that I had the capacity to learn. I just had the capacity to learn. Teachers would throw me out of classes when I was in regular school. And we discovered later that the reason why teachers threw me out of classes in regular school, because when they gave me one piece of work, along with the one piece of work they gave everybody else in secondary school, as soon as my work was finished, class was finished. I remember he gave me a piece of metal. He taught me how to use a welding machine. He gave me a piece of metal and he said, Eddie, listen, this is what I want you to do. I want you to join these two pieces of metal at an angle, and then this is how you use the arc welder. And then I want you to give a just nice weld down on the front corner and a nice weld down on the back corner. He gave that to me because he knew that was going to last me about half an hour to figure it out how I did it. And then about 10 minutes later, I said, sir, I'm finished. And he said, no, you're not. I said, sir, I'm finished. And he came over and he looked at what I did, and then he looked at me and he went, oh. So we said, all right, then this is what I want you to do. Then he gave me a bit of work that lasted the whole lesson, and he knew this is going to take him the whole lesson, and it took me the whole lesson. Because my brain was like a sponge. My brain was like a sponge, and I just needed to just absorb and absorb and absorb. He was the one who made me understand my capacity to learn. And he did it through a very simple thing. He did it for a very simple thing. And this is the first thing that I want to share with you this morning. Your ability to teach is based upon your ability to have relationship and understanding. It is. My ability to minister. My ability to minister in the church and minister in the communities, to minister in society is based upon my ability to have relationship and understanding. Same as you in the classroom. Without relationship and understanding, all you're going to really be doing is just trying to just push curriculum down the mouths of children. But with relationship and understanding, you actually understand their true capacity, you understand their stories. All of us who were in that school were actually juvenile criminal delinquents. That's what we were there for. I went into high school. I went into year 7. I went into year 7 from primary school with about 14 juvenile convictions behind my name, going into year 7. So it's kind of understandable that by the time I got to year 8, I was permanently excluded. I sat down in front of a teacher, an educational psychologist. I sat down in front of an educational psychologist when I was in year 8, and the educational psychologist said to my mother, Mrs. Hypolite, the problem with Eddie is that he is uneducatable. Now, when I went to school in the 70s in West London, there were 2 groups of boys that were systematically weeded out through a process of what became known around about 1993, around about 95, became known as institutionalized racism. After the killing of a young boy called Stephen Lawrence, the British legal system, the law system, they had to ask themselves some very important questions. And the inquiries that came out after that said, yeah, the British system right across the board is institutionally racist. And they weeded me out. The 2 groups of boys that were systematically weeded out of school, out of education during the 70s in West London were young Caribbean boys like myself and young white Irish boys. Young white Irish boys who were systematically weeded out of the education system with that statement. But he, in a very simple and in a very easy way, discovered, no, this boy isn't uneducatable. He just needs more work. He just needs more work and just a little more attention. Relationship and understanding. Relationship and understanding. I left Ardell when I was 16. He wanted me to stay, but the street was calling. You see, Ardell was a school, you stayed all week, you went home at the weekends. And I just wanted to be home. Unfortunately, I went back to what I was doing. And we lost track of each other, we lost connection with each other. Until I was actually around about 24. Till I was about 24. I decided to go back up to Ardell. I went back up to Ardell to visit Mr. German. I went back up. Oh, it was so wonderful. So wonderful to see him. This isn't when I was 24. But having gone up to see him at 24, we stayed in contact. We just stayed in each other's life. When I was married, Mr. German was there. When I became a minister, Mr. German was there. At the first blessing of my daughter, Mr. German was there. When I left my church and they did This Is Your Life, Mr. German was there as one of the guests. Mr. German just stayed around my life. Beautiful man. He died in 2009. And when I was at his funeral, funny thing was, when I was at his funeral, and as the car pulled up, I posted something about him on Facebook, about the impact that he had on my life. And when I was at his funeral, weirdest thing ever, the car pulled up, we was all standing out there, waiting, and their family had got out of church. I hadn't seen his son in 40 years, literally in 40 years. And when the car pulled up, one of the kids got out the car and looked over and said, Dad, there's Eddie. No, I didn't know who this kid was. I've never seen him. Dad, there's Eddie. And the family came out, his son John came up, greeted me. His daughter came up, greeted me, and we was talking afterwards. And they said, you do not know the level of impact that you had on our dad. It was he was so very proud of you. Then he had a friend of his who used to go holidaying with. Mr. German said, you know what, Eddie, I'm retired, and if I want to go to Brussels, I'll get in my car, I'll call up my friend Pete. I'll say, Pete, fancy going to Brussels? He said, of course, Cliff. I'll be round with you in 2 hours. He'll come over, we'll get in the car, and we'll drive to Brussels because we can. Pete saw me at the funeral. Pete said, you know something, Eddie, I've got to tell you this. Cliff won't mind. He said, you know what, Cliff, never expected you to become a preacher. When you left school, the last thing he expected you to be was a preacher. He did expect you to be a criminal, but he never expected you to be a preacher. And we laughed, you know. He turned and he said to my wife, you need to look after this man. Listen to me. You need to look after this man because he's a special man. He's a special man. I looked at my wife and I said, did you hear that? Did you hear that? It dawned on me though, it wasn't me that was special. It was Mr. German that was special. Because what they were looking at was his investment in relationship and understanding. I was his investment in relationship and understanding. They were looking at what I had become because a teacher took time to understand through relationship and understanding, not just curriculum. Using the curriculum and joining it together with relationship and understanding to unlock. He formed the basis of my love for education from then. I loved it, but I didn't realize I was good at it. I was good at it. It wasn't that I was uneducatable. It's just that somebody, through relationship and understanding, hadn't taken the time. And at the funeral, they were looking at me because I represented their father's investment. I need you to understand, family, that the gift that you have in the classroom, other than curriculum, is relationship and understanding. Relationship you to the student. Relationship of the understanding of the student to the curriculum. Understanding of the student to their fellow students. Understanding of you to the curriculum. Relationship and understanding unlocks it all. So, may you be empowered. May you be empowered in your understanding of yourselves. May you be empowered in your understanding of your skills. May you be empowered in the understanding of the ways in which you continue to inspire and teach. And may you also be empowered in your relationships. May you be empowered as you seek to look deeper than what the stats say and deeper than what the report says. And may you be blessed as you unlock the lives of these children. Father, thank you. Thank you for these teachers in here, these educators, these shapers of culture, these shapers of society. Pray that you will bless them with the gift, bless them with the continued gift of relationship and understanding. And bless them today as they are inspired. Bless them today as they think, as they laugh, as they argue, and do all the things that great teachers do in preparation to once again begin a whole new school year. We're grateful and we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.